What's going on, guys? It's your boy 8 Bars. I've been a music producer for over 12 years, and today I'm gonna show you how to make your own original soulful samples, just like the ones that I've made for Rick Ross, Joe Budden, Wale, and even more. So one of the things that I learned really early on working with the Justice League and producing for Joe Budden is that as much as I love sampling, it can really complicate your business. And at the end of the day, clearing a sample can be really expensive and leave the artist and the producer with next to nothing at the back end.
That's what she said.
So really just out of necessity, I kind of had to get really good at either replacing samples or just creating my own original samples from the jump so that we could just avoid all of the clearance issues that could possibly come up. So the session that we're gonna look at today is for an original soulful sample. I'm gonna walk you through my process. I'm gonna show you all the VST instruments that I use and some of the libraries that I use. And then I'm gonna break down some of the effects plugins that I use in order to make everything sound a little bit more authentic and vintage. I started off with this piano from Addictive Keys. I basically bounced the piano just to save CPU. But here's what the piano sounds like. I didn't really do all that much in terms of adding effects to it. I didn't really want to go for a super old sounding piano on this one. So really all I did was add some EQ because I knew that I was going to add a bass line and I didn't want them to clash. And then if you can see here, what I'm doing is I'm routing the piano also to another channel that is basically a compressor for the piano. So the very next sound that I added was a bass, and here's what that sounds like. And for the bass on this track, I didn't really go with anything fancy. As you can see here, I do have the Scarby Rickenbacker bass, probably my favorite like authentic sounding bass. But for this one, I just basically used the classic bass that comes with Contact. And I think it sounds pretty good for this track. Now, as far as the effects go, the first effect that I added in my chain was the R bass. Then I added the UAD Harrison 32C. It's a really dope plugin that I love using on my bass. It just makes my bass sound much more full. And then I just have some compression going. So next, one of my favorite instruments to add to pretty much any soul sample that I'm making is the Rhodes. It just naturally sounds like it's an old school 70s instrument, and it just gives you a soulful feeling. Now with the Rhodes, I want you to notice two things. One, I'm really just backing the main melody that I'm playing with the piano with the Rhodes. And then two, you can basically see that I'm staggering my notes. One of the things that I notice a lot with a lot of producers when they're trying to use like vintage plugins, but they're having trouble with making their instruments sound like it's an actual vintage old school soul sample, is they don't really play the instruments the way that they were originally intended to play. So one of the things that you can do to make your Rhodes sound really good is staggering your notes. And for the plugin that I use for the Rhodes, it's actually my favorite Rhodes plugin, or my favorite ePiano plugin, which is the Lounge Lizard EP4. I'm using the Modern Process preset. And then as far as the effects are concerned, I'm using the J37 from Waves. I'm basically just using the Abbey Road default. And what I did was I turned the noise level all the way down. And then I'm just using the Pro Q3 to clear out some space for other instruments and to also cut out the low end and maybe boost a little bit. And now next up, we have the horns, which are basically just layering exactly what the Rhodes are doing. And that's one of the things that you're gonna notice in a lot of the sample breakdowns that we're gonna do together, especially the ones that we wanna make sound a little bit more epic and more full, is you're just gonna layer a lot of your sounds basically by playing the exact same thing. And once again, for the plugins on the horns, I didn't use anything that's too crazy. I really just used the French horns ensemble from the orchestral section in Contact. And as far as plugins are concerned, I just cut out some frequencies that I didn't want there, and then I made some space. And then we have one more layer of flutes playing the exact same chord melody. And then what I did was I grouped these two instruments together, the horns and the flutes. And then I basically just added this plugin right here called Decimort 2. And really all I'm using this for is to cut off the frequencies. Next up, we have an electric sitar that I got from Omnisphere. And here's what that sounds like. As far as effects are concerned on this one, I just added some EQ. Then I threw on the RC20. I'm sure everybody knows about this plugin at this point. Love the RC20, and I'm just using the vinyl preset, and I made a couple of tweaks down here. And then last, going back to the concept of layers, I have two choirs playing the exact same melody as the sitar. First choir I got from Contact, and again, it's just the basic choir from Contact. And then the second choir I got from Omnisphere, and I basically just messed with the glide over here so that it can sound a little bit more legato rather than everything sounding really staggered. Now here's where I started doing a little bit more in terms of effects. So normally one of the things that I really like to do in order to glue my instruments together and make them sound a lot more cohesive is I'll take all of my instruments, I'll route them to their own bus channel, and then I'll add some saturation. And so for this sample, I use the Studer A800 from UAD, and the effect that it has is actually really subtle, but let me show you what it sounds like without. It just gives the sample a little bit more body to it. The next thing I did was I added this EQ and basically just cleared out some frequencies that I didn't really want. Next up, I added a little bit of compression. I used the CLA 2A. And as you can see, it really just kind of glues all of the instruments together. And if any of that sounds really subtle to you, just keep in mind that a lot of the time, a bunch of really small changes are gonna go a long way. So that's a look into my process for making original soul samples. And now hopefully you have some tools to go ahead and make your own. And if you liked what you saw, or if you got something out of that and you wanna see some more, maybe consider subscribing. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comment section. And if you're interested in using this sample, go ahead and check the link in the description. And I'll catch you next time.